I'm an Emmy award-winning camera operator with over 20 years experience at the highest network level. I've shot Super Bowls, Kentucky Derbies, Olympics, and even WrestleManias. I'm your host, Howie Zales, and I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur until recently, even though I own 3 television production businesses. Are you afraid to start your own company? Are you struggling? Do your friends and family not understand what you do? The Unexpected Entrepreneur Show will share stories and inspire people with the entrepreneurial bug to take that daunting leap. Welcome to the show. How did you get into this?
It was super unexpected. That's why I love the title of the show.
I say, man, if they can do it, I can do it.
I got to figure out how to spell that damn word if I'm going to be calling myself an entrepreneur.
I still can't. It's so funny.
My father was selling knishes and sold my mom a knish.
That's amazing. What a sale.
You had red hair for about the first 20 minutes I knew you, and then it went gray.
Welcome to the show. Today's guest is a professional lifestyle and portrait photographer based in Miami, Florida, who enjoys working closely with clients developing their brand with strong content. Craig is also a camera operator for ESPN and Fox Sports. Welcome to the show, Craig Ambrosio.
Thank you, Howie. I'm glad to be here, and I really appreciate that intro.
So honored that you took the time to join us. So Craig, you're a trained photographer. How did you get started?
Well, my story is I knew what I wanted to do since I was a little kid. I grew up, had a camera in my hand. I was always taking pictures of family, friends. I knew I wanted to be a photographer from a young, young age. So it was my destiny. I knew, and that's a big part of my life is that I kind of had a focus on where and what I wanted to do.
Totally understand. How did, when you got out of college and you got into photography, like what was the process?
So that's interesting. I went to RIT and studied photography 4 years. And when I left college, I was extremely disappointed that there weren't any jobs. It was extremely difficult to land work taking pictures. Here I am graduating from one of the best schools in the country. So my first job out of college is I actually was working at a landscaping company. I was doing that 5 days a week. And then 2 days a week, I was working for a newspaper in Nashua, New Hampshire as a photojournalist. So I was able to get Sunday, Monday shift taking pictures. And I did that for 2 years, but that job really taught me a lot. It made me appreciate and hustle to become a really, I guess you could say, I learned a lot to say that I really wanted to be a photographer and not anything else. And at that point, that job, at one point, I was not just doing landscaping, building walls, but we also operated I guess you could say a funeral home or a funeral. We would actually dig holes and bury people during the week. So it was a kind of a job that like I could not stand doing. I just looked forward to my Sunday, Monday shift as a photojournalist.
So tell me, how did you learn? What was the process? Did you have mentors? Did you just go out and experiment? What was your process of learning photography?
Well, in the beginning, as a photojournalist, you have to learn to do shoot everything. Is it from sports to spot news to whatever is coming up on that schedule? So I guess you could say is I learned the basics in college, but being as a newspaper photographer starting out was really what kind of showed me all aspects of the business. So it kind of helped me say, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a sports photographer? Do I want to do portraiture? So I guess you could say it was that point when I did that for 2 years as a part-time photographer. Then they hired me as a full-time photographer, and I did that for another 2 years. And then I moved on to another newspaper in Waterbury, Connecticut, and I worked full-time as a staffer there. There was a photographer, the guy who hired me there, his name is Robert Falsetti. He really pushed me along to become a mentor. He was my mentor. He was the guy that actually really pushed my career. And it was nice because every week we would always critique our images, put them up on the board. We would compare our work towards competing newspapers, and he really taught me to see things differently. So I was really glad to have that opportunity.
So let's get into like the technical aspects of photography, like aperture, manual settings, auto settings. What advice would you give to like the at-home person, the non-professional on how to shoot or set up their camera?
Well, first thing, take it off automatic. First thing, like that feature is the worst thing if you are trying to learn to understand the camera. So you have to understand the basic shutter and aperture, and then the ISO. Um, what I've always done is you just shoot. You got to keep shooting. And now with digital, back when I started, it was film, and you would just burn through film and just kind of test and learn. So with digital, you shoot, you could see your image, and you know what you're doing, and then you can make the adjustments on the fly. So I always recommend beginners to just shoot, and then have someone who understands photography edit your stuff, sits down with you and say, this is nice. You have the depth of field here. You're trying to blur your backgrounds, or you're trying to show more depth of field, and then going into the lighting aspect and showing you should add a little bit of fill light here, or let's get a little more detail in the eyes. So I think it's essential that you understand the technical aspect, but having someone that could sit down and edit with you.
I remember when we met years and years and years ago on WWE Diva shoots, you guys would take initial shots or practice shots using Polaroid cameras.
Yeah, that was the day. Like we would only get like 12 Polaroids a day because they were so expensive, and you would shoot one and be like, okay, it's close enough. We could kind of see a little bit of detail in this Polaroid, and then you go ahead and we were shooting chrome at that time, so your latitude of making errors is very, very minute. So that really taught you you can't make a mistake. You got to go for it and trust you got right in front of you.
Now I know someone that we're both friends with helped you get started. Why don't you talk about that story?
Meaning in what way? Like, how did I get started?
Yeah, you were assisting with Rich, right?
Yeah, Rich Frieda. So Rich Frieda, how I went is when I was working for that newspaper in Waterbury, Connecticut. Here I'm full time for 4 years. Rich Frieda was working also as a freelancer for WWE, and he was in Stamford, Connecticut, and here I was in Waterbury, Connecticut. So my full-time job, Rich asked me to assist for him for a couple of shoots. And Rich is a demanding photographer. He's very, very detailed, very talented, and knows exactly how to create this image. And he has it in his head. So you have to think like Rich to kind of create that image. So I was really learning a lot, and Rich became a mentor of me at that time, and was pushing me towards not just the newspaper aspect, but starting and going on your own and learning to push your business to another level. So at that time, I was taking as much vacation time to assist Rich for these shoots. And then I was given the opportunity by Tom Buchanan, who was at that time in charge of the photo department there. And he said, listen, Craig, why don't you try to do some shoots? And he gave me my first opportunity. And that was like 21 years ago. And that was with the Hardy Boys down in Miami. And I shot that all in chrome, and they loved it and went great. So then he gave me another opportunity, and then another opportunity. At that point, I was running out of vacation time from the newspaper. So I was at that point that if I worked one day for the WWE, it was more than I made in a week for the newspaper. So I had to make decisions and say, you know, it's time to move on from this job that I've really learned a lot. I've grown from it. I also saw the writing on the walls of the newspaper industry and where it's going, and how the budget cuts were starting to be implemented. And at that time, I made that move and moved to Miami from Connecticut and started my own freelance business.
We have a similar story. I was shooting television news, and I started freelancing the sports in sports broadcasting. And again, I would make in one day of work what I was making in a week shooting news, and then those jobs started to get in the way. So yeah, we have very similar paths in that
I
sense.
mean, it's scary to not knowing where that paycheck's coming, but when it does come, it's like, wow, this is what I deserve. I've worked hard, and you should be paid accordingly.
Absolutely. The title of the show is The Unexpected Entrepreneur. When did you, and as a self-employed person, when did you see yourself as an entrepreneur?
Wasn't until I moved to Miami, and you don't have a job for several weeks, and you have to pick up the phone and you got to call people. You have to go around and print your book and show your book at that time, and really try to market yourself. So that's one thing they didn't teach in college or anywhere in life, is how to market your business and how to actually run your business. So they taught all the aspects of photography. That's great. You could be the best photographer in the world, but if you do not know how to market and get your images out there, then you're not going to succeed. So that's kind of when I realized, wow, I need to learn about business.
So what was your process of learning about business? Was it school? Was it hiring a business coach? How did you go about doing that?
So I wish there was a business coach that I could have reached. I wish I knew the right people in the aspects. I really came together with other photographers using ASMP, Rich Frieda, other professionals, and just really picking their brains and asking them, what would you do? How would I do this better? What would you suggest? So it was frustrating. So when I moved to Miami, it probably took me a good 2 to 3 years to start establishing clients down here. And there's a lot of talented photographers down here, but there's also a lot of work. So I needed to revamp my business and kind of focus and say, these are the clients I'm going for, and really hustle. You need to hustle. You can't just, you can take a day off here and there, but you need to actually be picking up that call and making the move and going out and find those clients, because those clients aren't going to find you.
Totally agree. I mean, that's advice that I give a lot of people is, spend the money on a business coach, do the research, because although it costs money, it might get you to the finish line or the outcome you want to quicker than trying to figure whatever it is out on your own.
And nowadays, there's so many different varieties of marketing, and with social media and stuff, that just gets you so far, but it's not going to get you to the next level. It's really, I believe it's a personal thing, and people hire you not just for your work, but they're hiring you for who you are and what you're going to bring to the table. They want to know that you're going to bring that job to the next level, not just kind of average.
Absolutely. We have some photos that you sent us, so I'd love to show our audience some examples of your work, and maybe you can just kind of tell us what each picture is about.
Yeah, that was outside of Dubai when we were doing a WWE trip, and we were doing a Middle East tour, and we went. We were took some of the talent superstars, and we were going to go off roading in the desert, and unfortunately, whoever was driving it, I think it was Cesaro, and we had Titus O'Neil in the vehicle with us, and we kind of went off there we go. We went off the beaten path and got stuck. So we only had 2 vehicles. So then we had to send the other vehicle back as a search or a rescue vehicle to find someone. And it took a good 4 to 5 hours. Meanwhile, we have a show that night, and these guys are featured in the show. So we were freaking out, and I was worried because here I am taking these guys out to make pictures in the middle of the desert, and it's all on me. So needless to say, we got back just in time. Oh, this was in Afghanistan, and this is an Afghanistan soldier that was hired to protect us, to be with us, to stand guard out of our barracks. So we did several USO tours to build up morale for the troops with WWE. And so I've been there, Iraq 7 times, Afghanistan 5 times, and doing these tours with somewhat smaller groups, and started off with large groups, and we would go around, and it was more of bringing smiles to the troops. And it was very rewarding to me. And this photo just kind of meant a lot to me because this gentleman didn't speak a word of English, but he was there just to watch over us and protect us. And I admired that. Yeah, this is flying over Afghanistan in Blackhawks. And that's how we traveled around.
I've flown in Blackhawks. I love it.
It is. It's actually, I sleep the best when we're on a Black Hawk and you're exhausted and the sounds of the motors going. I was like, oh, I could just relax in there. Yeah, this is also flying over, and this is, they would fly with the back hatch open and the cold air coming in. It was just very refreshing. It's very, very soothing. Beautiful.
That's an awesome picture.
Thanks. Cool. This is one of my newer gigs. I'm actually looking at this image. Look how hunched over I am. Wow. So this is the camera system that I've been working with ESPN. That people call it the high def camera or the narrow depth of field camera, the hero camera. And it's a Sony camera mounted on a Ronin. And this was probably in Buffalo. Yes, this is in Buffalo. And it was snowing and raining. And I had to create a rain gear, which has never been done as far as I know, create waterproofing system over this camera and gimbal and monitor and everything to try to prevent the moisture from getting in. And yeah, it was pretty darn cold there. And to operate this camera, you really need to be hunched over and walk like a ninja. So it definitely looks awkward when I see it in the picture, but that's cool. Oh yeah, that's me operating from, I was in Green Bay, we're obviously with ESPN. And that's the rig that we've been using.
Awesome. So, awesome pictures, and we're going to get to your new endeavor shortly. But I have a few questions about like the post-production process. Are you involved in any of that? And what advice, if you are, do you give to the amateur?
So yeah, very good question. So the post-production is just as important as the pre-production, planning the shoot and creating a storyboard, what you're going to create as, how you're going to create this content. So you're not just going in and going, oh, let's just go shoot here and let's move here. You actually plan and know your shots and where you're going to shoot and what lights you need. In the post work, it's very similar in how I work is I'm doing all the editing and basic retouching and toning. So it's brought in, I use Photo Mechanic to do my editing as a quick edit. And then I bring it into Lightroom and create catalogs. And then the final image and selects are brought into Photoshop and given to tweaking. So any major retouching, I outsource that out. So like I just had a shoot with Venus Williams a couple of weeks ago and was with Stitch Fix. And the images and the selects, they selected a whole bunch for retouching. And those I outsource out just for the fine work to make sure they're done essentially perfect. But as a photographer, it's something you need to really understand and learn. You're not just taking pictures. You need to understand all the technical aspects in the post-production. You need to know, even if you're outsourcing it out, you need to know exactly how it's done.
That's great advice, because just because maybe you're not 100% involved in it, you still need to know how it works, because sometimes you need to be shooting for the post-production or have that in mind. No, that's great advice.
Yeah, if I could be shooting only always and just shoot, that would be great. But you obviously, you're shooting and you're spending time doing post work. And I like to have that control and edit so that the images that I'm giving to the client, I know exactly which ones they're going to get.
Talk about your shooting style and how that may differ from other photographers.
That's interesting. So, when I was shooting mostly sports at a time, you're shooting with long lenses, narrow depth of field. You're creating clean backgrounds, and you're seeing things in that just through that lens and that tight perspective. Then when you're shooting for different stuff, I might be shooting wider outside if I'm doing more portraiture or showing more scenery. So I guess it depends. I'm a type of person is I carry a bunch of lenses in my bag. I want to know that if I'm thinking one look, I could create another look immediately by changing the lens and changing the style. So if someone's looking to get two different looks, I can create that really quickly just by changing the lens and a little bit of the lighting. So that's kind of, every job is shot differently, I feel. But my style is clean light and clean backgrounds and scenery. Like it's important that the subject pops and that they look they're the ones that are actually looking clean in the image there with my lighting. And lighting is extremely key in how I shoot. Everything I shoot is just about lit.
I think we have an example of that in another picture that you had sent us uh, to show our audience.
I'm interested to see. Oh yeah, these are the paddle wall players. So even though it's outdoors, it's lit with a pro photo strobe off to the side there, and you can see all the details in the sunscreen coming off this gentleman, and it's amazing when you see this print blown up. It's really cool, but the lighting is really what makes it.
Yeah, you could really tell he pops.
It's so
Um,
classic.
yeah,
It's Ivan.
very similar.
Yep.
So I know you talked about the lenses you carry, and for the amateurs out there, explain like and you know, as an amateur photographer myself, my favorite lens go to is a 70-200. Can you explain what the 70 to the 200 means, and what does that translate into what someone can achieve from using a lens like that, and why you would use that type of lens?
So let me backtrack a little bit. When I was in college, one class I had for an entire quarter was everything had to be shot with just a 50 millimeter lens. A 50 is basically close to the perspective of what you see with your eye. And I think this was the best class I ever took in college. And I think if I was to ever teach, this would be the class I would want to teach, is put this one lens on and you go find the pictures. So it teaches you to move so you don't get lazy in zooming in and out. It's a fixed lens.
Right.
So if you want to create that portrait close up, go to the subject and really engage with them. If you want it to be a wide angle, you got to get real far back to make it work. So the 50 is a perfect lens for people to learn. And when you get into the longer glass lenses, it kind of teaches you to really kind of sit there and wait for the subjects, wait things to happen, and then you can zoom in and zoom out. It also does make your depth of field in cleaner backgrounds because you have that longer glass on. But yeah, I love, my favorite lens is a 50, or it's definitely a 50, 51 2.
Yeah, that's I have a 50 also, and the 70-200, which I absolutely love, but it is heavy.
It is heavy. Cool.
But it makes great pictures. So let's talk about your new endeavor. Explain to the audience. You briefly explained it a little bit, but how you got started, what gave you the idea, and where you are now with it.
So this was back last year, last November, and here I was with COVID, wasn't working hardly at all, and I was very stir crazy. I was driving myself nuts, and here I am. I got this amazing Sony equipment, mirrorless cameras, all this gear, and I started hearing about gimbals and how gimbals are worked. And I started playing with the camera on the gimbal to kind of create different looks. Now here I am not a videographer. To be honest with you, I had no interest in shooting video, but I started playing with it and shooting my son skateboarding and going around. And at this time, roughly, Fox Sports was doing something very similar, and they were trying to test doing this as broadcast work for football. So I went to WWE, who I freelance for and work for often, and I went to their TV department and pitched this idea. And I said, listen, if I put my Sony mirrorless with a 50 millimeter lens, like a 1.2, put it on a gimbal, look what it looks like. It looks like amazing. It has this amazing pop. And they were like, wow, this is pretty cool, but I don't think it's going to work for broadcasts. And how are we going to get this signal? And it was all these ifs, ifs, ifs. So then they scheduled a conference call with Fox Sports, and Fox Sports was one step ahead of us. And they were going, and they had this wireless pack, and they were figuring out how to get it to send back to the truck. And here WWE was saying, well, we're not going to invest that money into it. So then I went out and bought this pro consumer, more consumer like wireless system, and mounted it on with a monitor and brought it to another level. And then in December, they said, hey, let's go live with this on the air. Let's put you out there and let's have you do this. And the first show, it was like a hit. And they came out, people were like, is this 3D, or is this a video game, or what is this we're seeing? This looks amazing. So then they contracted me out and started using that camera. And they have that whole system now themselves. They bought that. And right about this time also, then Fox Sports started calling me. And then I started working for them doing boxing and did a couple of football games for them as well. And kind of one thing led to another. And then it it really it really kind of opened my eyes up to a whole nother creative aspect, because here I was, it's still a photographer. I see things in that aspect, but I've always worked with videographers such as yourself, and I understand video. So it was opening me up being more creative in a different way by shooting and putting this camera in my hands and letting me kind of capture moments from beginning to end. So now it's the door is wide open, and I just finished, or almost done here, with Monday Night Football with ESPN. So I've been doing the whole season. I just have the Pro Bowl left, and who knows where it's going to take me after this.
You talked about something in what you just said and offered really great advice. I don't know if you know, for entrepreneurs out there. It would have been really easy for you to just say, "Oh, forget it," when WWE said, "We're not interested in it," or "We don't want to spend the money." But you went out with the entrepreneurial mindset, and you spent the money. You invested in yourself and in your product, in your brand. You bought the equipment. You sold it to them, and they bought into it immediately, and then obviously eventually ESPN bought into you, and Fox bought into you, because I know you've done boxing and a whole season of NFL football. So for all young entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs out there, it's a great lesson.
Yeah, and I kind of never gave up on my idea. Here I am, I'm a still photographer, but I have an opportunity to now do something I've never done. And it was very nerve wracking. I asked my wife, she was like, pushing me along, but I was like, wow, this is something I could really do. And I had to show myself and go, I know I can do this. I can create this look that they're looking for, and I can do it for broadcast level. And the challenge really excited me to even go further with it. And right now it's just been great. And if you were to ask me which are like more video or stills, now I'm saying, wow, I really love.
I think we have an example of some of the stuff that you've shot.
Cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about what this is.
This was Big Ben's last game, and I was shooting in super slow-mo. So you would shoot it, it would be going back broadcast, and then you also be playing through camera super slow-mo. And here I am, like no one else was really on this moment here. And up close, you could see he's tearing. This is right at the end. This is right before the beginning of the game, and it was a cold weather game. This is his last home game in Pittsburgh, so it's a really emotional moment. And here I was right there on him, found him out, and going right through the doors with him. And they use this as a huge billboard spot, and to tease the game. And it was just a very cool moment. So this camera, what I've been doing with ESPN, gets a lot of usage and lots of airtime, and that's what's super exciting for me.
That's amazing. Great job. That's
Thank you.
that's amazing, and the footage looks great. So any other advice you'd like to offer our listeners?
Well, I think you have dreams and goals, and even if they're not realistic, you have to keep in mind that you got to go for it. You have to go for what you want and what you want to do, and you have to invest in it to actually make it happen. So I think it's imperative to understand that if you don't know how to obtain or get these goals, try to find the people that actually could help you get to that point. And I've been very lucky to have that through my career here, is having friends and colleagues that really have helped push me along to get me where I'm at now. So I'm very grateful.
Awesome advice, Craig. Awesome. How can people get in touch with you? Social media?
Thanks. It's as you can see, Instagram at Craig Ambrosio, or my website, www.craigambrosio.com. So I'm pretty active on social media for the most part. I wish I could spend more time doing it, but it takes away from everything else I do. So, but yeah, definitely. Any way you want to reach out.
And we'll put those links in the show notes We really appreciate you being here, Craig, and all the advice, photography advice, entrepreneurial advice you offered our audience. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you, buddy. I'm here and I'm open to answer any questions for anybody that wants to reach out. So thanks, Howie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Have a great day.
Thank you. And you as well.
Thanks. Again, thank you to our guest, Craig Ambrosio, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.